Alright, well, the blonde is turning out quite nicely. I finished doing the highlights with the Ushabti T-bone, but the transitions aren't very smooth. So what I want to do now is I want to take some of the Seraphim Sepia and I'm going to wash it all over the hair. Now it's going to darken things down a little bit again, but it should also make sure that all of the colors blend very nicely, and it's also going to give this a bit of a richer color as well. I shouldn't do too much, but I think this might even lend it some kind of fiery highlight almost. Hopefully. I've never done this before, like I said, I've never made a blonde Space Marine, so I'm just trusting that this is going to end up giving us the results that we want. It's a bit of an experiment, really. But I think it's going to end up looking pretty good. Now, same thing for the end there. Going to put some color on there. On the other side. Like so. And also the whiskers on the side of the face need to have a wash applied so that they are the same color and they should not look off, right? Alright, so we're going to let this dry and we'll see what the end result is going to be like and if we should do another final highlight. I'm not entirely sure if we need to, but I think we should be okay. I would like, however, to go back to Agric's Earthshade for a moment and do the leather that is holding the top knot together, because that is still a little bit of a different color. I would like to darken it down just a little bit, just to make sure it really does look like it's going to be something of a different material, like it should stand out a little bit, is what I'm trying to say. And also forget, let's close this up, of course the hair at the bottom of the top knot also should get a little bit of Seraphim Sepia. Right, so it's not a whole lot, and we should be very careful in applying this paint. But we do want that to have a similar color to the rest of the hair, otherwise it's going to look off. Right, so that is about all we need. I think the blonde is turning out pretty cool. And from here we should start doing some metallics, I think. We could start with the gold, and then we can do the silver or the iron parts. We can highlight those, and then finally we're going to start doing the black. And the black is going to be an interesting one as well, especially here on the shoulder pad, where we really want that wolf head to pop out with all the detail that's on there. Finally, we're going to do a select few highlights of the armor panels, and I also want to give a different color to the chain blade, like little zigzags of a different color, but I still haven't decided what that should be, because I don't want to do yellow, because we don't have it anywhere else on the miniature. If we do red, we could do that, but I don't know. We might not be able to see the blood for the blood god very easily when we do a red color on the chain blade. On the whole though, the model is coming together pretty nicely, I think. I'm pretty happy with the progress so far. Anyway, let us take the next paint, which is going to be Gehenna's Gold. Now this one is something that I need to shake quite a bit because it has dried up a little bit and it's a really dark color. As you can see, this is really not the color that we want, so I'm going to be shaking this for a while until we have a pretty decent color. If not, we will have to change things over to a different metal color, but we'll see. We'll see. I'll be right back. Right, well, I've shaken the pot. As you can see, the consistency and color of this is now quite a bit different. And this is the color that we want. So we're going to apply some to the palette right here, and we're going to need a bit, I think. A fair amount, because we have some things to cover. Now, when you thin down the metallic paints, you really should take another water pot, because you don't want to contaminate the regular paints with the metallics inside of this one. It's going to look very weird. Unless that may be an effect you're going for, I don't know, but it's not what we want to do right now. Anyway, let's get rid of this for a moment. So we are going to do all the gold trim, and in particular on the eagle chest. We're going to do it on the skull. That's going to brighten it up quite nicely. Right, we're going to do the upper part of the wing. And we're going to do all of these little feathers on the wing individually. I'm going to give them a nice little shiny coat. We're going to leave some color in the recesses, of course, so that we will not lose depth in this thing. Probably you can already see the difference between both sides of the chest. The one is quite a bit brighter than the other one. Still a pretty subtle effect, but it does break up the monotony of the bronze color. So we're going to do this on the other side as well. Then we're going to start doing it on the wolf head on the weapon, as well as on the shoulder blade. So the shoulder pads, let me just get this into view, and it's quite annoying because I keep doing this. We're just going to run it along the shoulder pad like that, brighten it up again, right, like so. Alright, so I'll continue doing this. I'll see you guys in a second. Alright, with the gold now done, we are going to use some of the Runefang steel to do some final edge highlights on the gold, and then we're going to also edge highlight all of the metal parts. So we're going to give this a good firm shake, as always. Want to put some on the palette. Now this paint in particular is already quite thin, so it doesn't really need to be thinned down a whole lot, but we're going to do a little bit of that anyway, and hopefully it's going to stay wet long enough for us to really work with it. Now when we do this, we are going to focus on some of the immediate highlights. So we're going to do a little bit on the top of the skull there, a little bit underneath the wings, the corner of the wings basically, right, the edges of the wings. Just going to make this stand out a little bit. We're going to do the same thing on the inside of this wing. Right, that's a little bit thick, unfortunately. We might have to clean it up a little bit later. Man, the angle of the camera is really different now. Let's go over here. Right, we're going to keep adding little highlights to that eagle on his chest. I already know this video is not going to be perfect, to say the least. Oh well, I can't do much about it now. All I can do is do my best and continue on. I actually don't really like this. It doesn't really look very good to me. Maybe I should have just left it at the gold. But we're going to continue on the path we're on and see if we can make it work. If it's an extremely weak highlight, it does look a lot better. Right, so I'll continue doing this. I'll see you guys in a second. Alright, well, the model is getting closer and closer to being finished. I quite like the look of this already, but there are some things we have left to do. One of them is to highlight all the black, and for that we are going to use Ashen Grey. Right, I forgot the name there for a moment, but yeah, as always, shake the pot. And this is another day for me, by the way, so this is basically day 3 that I've been working on painting this dude. As I said, I'm a slow painter. Sometimes I lose patience and then it's better for me to stop and come back later. But as always, put a dab of paint on there, thin it down to a nice workable quality. So let me just grab the palette there. Right, maybe a little bit more water. Not too much more, but a little bit more. And clean the brush off most of it. Now the things that we're going to be focusing on are the wolf head on the shoulder pad, right? That is important. As well as the bolt gun. The bolt gun also needs to be highlighted. And basically we're going to follow along all the hard lines of the bolt gun. Now that's going to be a lot of work. And we will start with the magazine casing right there, or at least where we put the magazine in. We're just going to follow along all the edges, and this can be a little bit of a thick highlight, because what I want to do after this is I want to follow along with a brighter color of gray, so that this stands out even more. So if you make a thick highlight here, right? That was a bit of a mistake there. We can follow along later with a smaller highlight, which will fall inside of the thicker highlight that we've already made. Now what that does is basically create a sense of light coming off of it, right? So this is going to be tricky. It's going to take some time to do. Hopefully all of you guys are still watching, but I know this is not the best video in the world when it comes to model painting, so all I can do is hope, really. I'm not the best, nor will I probably ever be, but hey, I'm trying. And I'm having fun, and that's the most important part of the hobby. So, and if I look at my first model, and I look at the models that I'm painting now, I have to say there is a huge increase in the quality, to say the least. Alright, so we're going to continue along all the lines on the bolter like this, and as for the wolf head, right, we're basically going to do the same thing. We're going to follow along the edge of the wolf head, we're going to follow along the ear, but especially the inside of the head there is important, because it creates the sense that there is a bit of depth. There is depth to this thing, of course, but we need to emphasize it. So for that, when we edge highlight with a brighter color, you can clearly see that it's basically high, that one part is higher than the other part. Right, so we're going to do this all around the wolf head. If you're running low on paint, load up again, but don't take too much. Like I said, for this particular thing, it's okay to have a bit of a thicker highlight, because we're going to follow along with a brighter one afterwards. And that one is going to be thinner. Or at least we're going to try to keep it thinner. Right? But already you can see there's a bit of difference in the wolf head. Hopefully on camera it will catch just as well. I'm also going to run a line under the eye so that the eye really stands out. And we're going to keep a little field of black in the center of the wolf head. And like that, I'm going to continue on with the bolt gun. The wolf head is pretty much finished. I'm also going to start doing some of the chainsword later, but I want to add some red to the chainsword after all, I've decided. So I'm going to start doing that in just a moment, but I'll be right back. Alright, well, the black is almost done. I also remembered I had the straps of the armor on the back to do. And we also had to do, of course, like the knee pads, or not the knee pads, but like the joints behind the knee, in the arm over here as well. So, yeah, it was a little bit more time consuming than I thought, but we're going to continue on. And I want to do a final edge highlight on the bolt gun using Administratum Grey, I think. I've never really done this final step before, so I'm not entirely sure if I have the correct color of grey, but I don't want to do Dawnstone because that is still quite dark, and it is the color of the rest of the armor, so that might look off. Whereas Dawnstone or Administratum Grey, I'm going to do the final highlights of the armor as well. With this, it's going to be a little bit lighter, but like I said, I've never tried it before, and I'm curious to see the end result. So I'm going to apply some to the palette. I'm going to thin that down a little bit, or more than a little bit, because this paint is a little bit thick by the looks of it, so I want to thin it down quite a lot, because this should not be a strong highlight, right? This should be very precise along the sharpest edges. Very lightly touching everything. Very, very lightly. Hopefully you guys can see, but this should turn into a nice, neat, extreme highlight. This might even be a little bit too white, I'm not entirely sure, but we'll see what it looks like at the final result. I guess I won't put it everywhere, just some of the sharpest corners. So we have this little edge over here that we could highlight, so we'll draw a little line along that edge. Also the little rivets on the bolt gun need to be highlighted, so that they stand out. All the little rivets really do need, otherwise they kind of fall into nothingness and they don't really show up. And again, being very careful in how I apply this. Just a few dots here and there, just to create an extreme emphasis on some of these raised parts. There we go. Just a little bit on the edges here and there. Alright, so I'll continue doing this on the bolt gun. As for the wolf head though, we're basically going to do a similar thing. We're simply going to follow all the raised details. So let me just turn around a little bit and hopefully you can see. We're just going to follow the edge over here where it's a little bit higher. Already the paint is a little bit dry because it's not giving off much, which is both a blessing and an annoyance. On one side it makes it easier for us to do really fine highlights, because if it doesn't give off too much we have to work a little bit harder to make it stick, basically. But on the other hand, it's also a little bit frustrating. And again, this should be a very small highlight. On the sides are giving off a little bit more. It's a little bit unfortunate. But it should end up looking pretty good. Alright, so I'll continue doing this. I'll see you guys in a second. Alright, so the black is all highlighted and hopefully it's going to look pretty good. The same for the wolf head. you can see there's like a bit of brightness to it now, and all the depths and everything, they really bounce off, and you can really, like at a glance, you can tell what it is. Like, and the first time you put on just black, at some points it's kind of hard to see what you're looking at sometimes. But now with the highlights in place, you can actually tell, hey, you know, there's a raised surface on that wolf head, and looks pretty good. So what I want to do next is I want to put some red triangles on the chain blade, or on the chain sword actually. So we're going to go back to Mephiston red, which is what we've used for all the other reds, and we're going to use this to draw those little triangles. And it's going to be a little bit tricky as well. I also made a little mistake with one of the metallics on the shoulder pad, which you can probably see right there. So I'm also going to try to neaten that up a little bit with the Mephiston red. We might lose a little bit of shading in that area once I do. I'm not entirely sure. We'll have to, yeah, that's going to be that's going to have to be shaded again. But that's fine. I'm just going to do a large part of this thing again, brighten it all the red up a little bit, but I'm just going to leave some of the darker stuff in the recesses as well, because if I just do a single line, it might be noticeable. If I do the whole thing again, I have two things. Like, I can brighten up the red even more, and it can also be a little bit more of a it's going to be a better transition between the red, basically. I'm going to do this on the other side as well, just to brighten it up again a little bit, maybe in here a little bit as well. There we go. Now we should have a nice bright red shoulder pad once again. So now then comes a hard part, because we're going to have to freehand the chainsword a little bit. Right, and I'm going to start drawing very carefully. I'm going to start drawing some triangles. So I'm going to start here. I'm just going to draw the outside of it. Right, and we're going to fill this in a little bit later. Now at first these will be very pretty dark red lines, right? Hopefully you can see them already a little bit there. We're going to start filling those in, and as always we're going to use roughly 2 thin coats to build up the color a little bit. That's going to be extremely important. But I like having the red on this model to break up the gray. I don't like the yellow, so I'm going to stay away from the yellow, but basically I'm going to draw little triangles like this all across this side of the chain sword as well as on the other side. And it's going to take some time, but hopefully the end result is going to look pretty good. Even though I'm going to cover the entire thing in blood almost, or at least, you know, all the teeth of the chainsword, and also a little bit of the chain blade itself as well. And if I apply blood for the blood god thickly, hopefully it's still going to show up and it's not going to be too subtle. Anyway, I'm going to continue doing this, and I'll see you guys in a moment. Alright, so that's now done. We have a bunch of red triangles going up and down the blade, and we have that on both sides of the character. And I hope that this is going to break up the monotony of the color scheme a little bit, because it is a lot of grey, it is a lot of black. And to offset those colors, of course we have the hair, we have the gold, but we really rely on the red shoulder pad, the arm, and things like that. But I think the model is coming together quite nicely. Now, one thing I'm forgetting is this little doohickey, right, that is on the Space Marine's leg. Now it can be just this color, and that's fine, but I would like to have a little bit of green inside of the radar stuff. So for that I'm just going to take a brighter green called Warboss Green. Right, so I'm just going to shake this up a little bit. I could use a red for that as well, but I want to have a little bit of a bit of color differentiation in there, just to shake things up a little bit. We don't have green anywhere else on the model, so it's going to be a small thing, but it's going to be a thing. And if people notice that, you know, it's going to look good. Now I cannot do this on the screen for you guys. I have to be very precise as I paint this in. And I will make mistakes with this, and I do need to clean it up with some lead belcher later on, because I cannot get inside of this without messing up the edges. It's a simple fact, unfortunately. Now, it's okay if I touch the walls on the inside a little bit, because the walls, they can just kind of look like they are glowing a little bit, right? So I should be able to see it now. Just a little bit. It's extremely subtle, right? It doesn't pop into view straight away, but it's there, and it's going to be there to break things up a little bit. When people look at it, it's like, oh, you know, a little bit of extra detail there. Right, so I'm going to let that dry. Later on I'm going to cover the edges that I hit up again with lead belcher to clean it up a little bit, but now we're almost done. We can just start doing some highlights of the main armor, and we're going to use that, or we're going to use Administratum Grey for that, just like we did on the bolt gun, but a little bit more obvious now. Now, I'm not going to highlight absolutely everything. First of all, it's a lot of work, but I also think it can look quite cartoony, and I would prefer to take a select few areas that would really shine in the sun, where the sun would really reflect off of the armor. So it's not going to be everywhere, but it's going to be in some places. Now, an obvious one for me would be the knee pads, right? Because the knee pads, they stick out, right? Same thing with the back of the leg. We could highlight the back of this leg a little bit. The other one would be in the shadow, so we don't have to do that one. We could do a line on the backpack over here. I would like to do the fingers so that they pop out a little bit more. I could do the hand over here, but most importantly, those things protecting the elbow, they have this ridge line, right? And it doesn't really grab the attention much unless we highlight it. So that is something I'm going to do as well. But first off, let's just start with a basic highlight. I don't even know how to hold this model anymore for this, because this is just an awkward angle for me. I guess holding it like so, it's going to be okay. Just going to run the edge of the brush along the model like so. It's going to be a thin line, not too extreme, but these are like raised surfaces that would catch a lot of light. So it's okay for us to, you know, emphasize those a little bit more. I'm going to do the same thing on the other one, and this is just tricky, really tricky. It's easy to mess up. I'm not really fond of this stage. I'm always a little bit hesitant about it, because I feel like I've done so much work on the model already at this point, and I don't want to mess it up. And that's a little bit too thick. We can clean it up a little bit later though. And that's the thing, right? We should not be too scared about these things. We're here to make mistakes, it's fine. We can clean them up usually pretty easily. Another thing that we can do is the belt buckle. Of course, also the thing here in front that is protecting the neck. It's an obvious place that would catch the light. So we're going to edge highlight this side as well. Now, again, a little bit too thick right there in the center, but I can fix it up with a little bit of Dawnstone later on, so that's going to be absolutely fine. I could even highlight both sides of it, because it is such a obvious place. It really does catch the attention quite a bit, so, and it's another really strong edge that would catch light. Now, normally speaking, a lot of people do every single edge of this model, so they would do it under the breastplates, and they would touch up everything, and it can look good. It really does bring out the detail, but I'm not entirely sure if that's what I want to go for. I think we're just going to select a few areas that will really catch the light, and other things that are underneath legs or stuff like that that don't naturally catch the light so much, we're going to leave them be. But the belt would be a good place to edge highlight, so we can very carefully grab the top of the belt and the edges of it. Right, we're just going to very carefully work our way around the model in this fashion. Now, again, like the top of that little stud in the belt, but maybe not the underside of it, because this is where the light would reflect off, right? Little things like that. Hopefully that's going to make the model really stand out and pop a little bit more. So I'm going to work my way around the model like this, and then we will finally arrive at one of the most fun moments of this whole project, which is painting on the blood, because we are pretty much done after this edge highlighting is done. So I'll see you guys in a moment. Alright, well, the model is now nearly done. We only have one final step remaining. Now, as for the edge highlighting, I did go overboard with it a little bit, because I was looking at it, and the more surfaces I edge highlighted, the more wrong it seemed that I wasn't highlighting some other parts. So I did end up highlighting pretty much every edge, which took me a long time to do on this model, because there are a lot of edges, of course. Now, I did try to do as much of the upper edges and not so much the lower ones, and the reason for that is, well, you can see it on the knee pad here, for example. The top of the knee pad, I edge highlighted that a little bit. The bottom row, or the bottom of the knee pad, like the actual round part, I did not edge highlight that, but I did highlight the edge below that knee pad. Now, my thinking is, of course, that the upper areas, the raised surfaces, would catch the light, and the lower part of that round knee pad would actually not catch so much light. So that's why I did not edge highlight that part. So basically all the parts are now done. We have edge highlighted everything, we have colored in everything, everything is ready, and we could call it quits here, but of course he just decapitated someone. And he did not decapitate someone, but he certainly did cut off his hand. And so of course it requires more blood than this little bit of red and white for the bone. So for that we have blood for the blood god. Now, I haven't used it in a little bit, and so you can see there's like an orange part to it, and that's not supposed to be there. So we're going to give this a really good shake until you can see now everything is a lot redder. Now, when you open this up, this actually does look quite a bit like blood, which is really cool. Now, we can be a little bit messy with this, and because we can be messy with this, I have gotten this little splash shield. So I put it there to protect all of my models and things like that, like the paint pots and stuff, so I can use this, because what we're going to do is we're going to use two different techniques. Let me just replace my camera here. Right, so we're going to use two different techniques. One of them, of course, is just going to be painting on the blood. Now, for that I'm going to use an old brush. This one is quite messed up, and we are going to use it to stipple the blood onto the wound and onto the chainsword. Afterwards I'm going to switch to a different brush, which is not an official Citadel one. It's an old messy brush, and as you can see there's some red in there, so I've used this before. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this to flick the blood at the model from one side. And basically what I mean by that is just we're going to do this. And what that's going to do is it's going to kind of launch little particles of the fake blood onto the model, and it's going to create a very random blood splatter effect, which is perfect for something like a chainsword, because this is not neat. This is a messy weapon, right? And of course it's going to splatter blood all over the arm, the shoulder pad, probably the face, and that is everything that we're going to do right now. So yeah, basically we're going to get the blood for the blood god. I'm going to shake it once again, just to make sure, when I open this up, maybe the light is not so good, but to me this looks a lot like blood. Maybe it could be a little bit redder. Maybe I did not shake it correctly. Let me just turn it upside down, shake it a little bit more, because I want this to be really red. Now the blood effect of this is really cool, and it does, or it can be used to great effect, like I already showed you guys earlier, but I'm going to show it to you again because I'm really happy with this blood effect. I use blood for the blood god on this head. Now this head, I pre-painted it red and a little bit of purple. I shaded it basically the same way that I did this part. So the red, or the head, looks a little bit redder and a little bit darker on the inside, like the purplish color in there. Kind of looks like brain matter or whatever. That's because I pre-painted it in those colors, right? And that's why I've also done that here. Not because this is going to look particularly good, though it could function, but it is not going to be as good as blood for the blood god. So let me get rid of this finished model, and we're going to start applying this, which I'm really excited about this, man. Oh my god. Right, so we're just going to get some of this stuff on here. Now we're just going to use it straight from the pot. There's no need to fin this, right? But we don't want to use too much. I guess we could get rid of a little bit. And then we're going to start applying this to the model. Now, I don't want to use this too much on the bone itself, because the bone actually, well, the thing is, I want the bone to shine through, right? Now this is slightly transparent, so it's perfect for this kind of thing. But if I use too much, I can get a little bit off so that the bone shows up a little bit. So I should clean my brush a little bit. I can flick some of this off. And now it will show a little bit of that bone as well, like a little bit of white. Right? Now it's fine if we get some of the blood on the bolter, because right now on the muscle of the bolter we have a little bit of blood there as well. And it's fine because we have this violent motion of ripping the arm towards the back, and of course that's going to create some blood splatter, right? So we're not going to use too much of that. We can do a little bit of blood on there. Now we're going to use some spray effect on this as well. I'm just going to paint a few select pieces here, just to catch a little bit of that blood. And then we're going to move on to the bolter, and I'm going to paint some of this onto the bolter as well. Now what I want to do here is I basically want to coat a lot of these the actual blades, and then I want to paint the center of it. Alright, so this creates the effect that, of course, all of these teeth on the chainsword have been ripping through a body. But I only want to have a bit of blood in the center there. It's not going to show up all that much, to be honest. But hopefully the effect is going to be there, that basically he used the middle of the sword to saw through this arm. It didn't cover the whole body, so it's just going to be in the center there a little bit. It's going to be a pretty subtle effect, I guess. Just get blood all over here. Now we don't want it to be too thick in all the places, and I think we might have to go back for a second coat. But already you can tell it's getting kind of dirty, and you can really tell that he's been using this sword. Right? We want some of that blood to pool in the recesses, but it shouldn't be everywhere, I guess. And of course, some of that the wolf head should be covered a little bit as well, because those teeth, actually they go like this, right? They go top to bottom. So we could get some blood underneath here as well. Not too much. There should be some, because that's the way the blood is being pulled, right? I used a little bit too much on the wolf head there, so we can just take some of that off. And again, we can come back for a second coat later on to really make it dark, to really make it red in some places. Yeah, I think we're getting somewhere. No. Oh my god, it looks like I'm bleeding onto this little cloth. Anyway, what we're going to do next is we are going to get some of this blood onto the bristles of this dirty old brush. Right? We don't want too much, we don't want too little, it's kind of hard to tell, so we're going to use the model, put it to the side for now, and we're going to... Right. Now, it's off camera for a bit, but I can show you, you can see the little red flecks there. So that's kind of the effect that we're going to go for. It's really random. Yeah. So it's kind of hard to hold it in the right position here. Alright, let me just... Already lost most of that blood there, I think. So this is going to be a little bit tricky. I guess we should just hold it to the side here like this. Just place it down on the tabletop. And we're going to get rid of a little bit of it. And then we're going to start flecking this. Let's get it to the table edge there. Not really showing up too much. I guess we need a little bit more blood than I thought. This is going to be a trial and error part, and as always with these paints, you really should try to put on as little as possible in the beginning, because you can always add more, but it's more difficult to remove things. Right, and I don't mind if this is all covered in blood. If it's in his hair, if it's on the shoulder pad, his arms, it's all going to be fine. Now we're getting a little bit of that blood on the face. Right, we're getting a little bit of that blood on the arm, but not a whole lot. So I'm just going to keep doing this. Now the thing is, I am only going to do it on this side of the body, because that is the side where the sword arm was used, right? It's not on the other side, so it doesn't make sense for him to be sprayed in blood on this side, unless it comes from the ripped off arm. So I'm going to continue this, and I will show you guys the finished model in just a second. Well, that was it for this first ever painting video that I've ever done. I'm quite happy with the model. I think he turned out really well, considering my limited skill. Anyway, yeah, please let me know what you thought of it, areas to improve on if you would like to see videos like this again. And I will see what I can do, because, well, it's quite challenging. It's very different from what I usually do. Anyway, please leave a like and a comment below, or consider subscribing. And I will see you guys for whatever video I do next.